Hello and welcome back to Sacred Wellness. I am your host, Terrie Ann Russell. I'm so grateful that you are all here with me today. Each episode, we peel back layers of what it truly means to step into our authentic power, heal deeply, and awaken to our soul's wisdom. Today, I'm honored to sit with my extraordinary guest, Terrie Christine. She's an intuitive energy healer, author, and guide who has helped many people break free from limitations, release, and step fully into their personal power. Terrie has the gift of going straight to the core of what blocks us. Terrie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. You said yes, and here I am. Thank you. I'm so excited.
Me too. I've been looking forward to this conversation because I don't know. Many of my listeners reach out and they talk about how can they gain some sort of clarity and freedom. Many are either in the beginning stages of awakening or in the middle somewhere and they get caught in that frustration space. I was going here, I don't know where, but I don't know who I was and I don't know who I'm going to be. So they get stuck in that middle phase. So I
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit, start there today because many don't know, often when we're awakening the spiritual journey, what it means for us. Can you take us back through for you when you started your spiritual journey and what that looked like?
Yeah, thank you so much. So, just to make it a brief story, I was at the end of a 14-year relationship, didn't want to be in this physical body anymore. After giving, 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 I felt if this is what love is, I'm out. And I had a nice little conversation with God, gave me three simple words: love will come. It was all around me. And then I went back to bed, and literally my whole life changed that very next day. And people really want to know, well, what does that look like? Because that was the beginning of my transformation. Well, it looked like it gave me hope. Now, as an intuitive, I sort of resist planting that word hope in there because what hope can look like is people like, I hope that works out, and they sit back, and carefree, hoping that they'll attract it, when in fact they haven't done all the steps to become the magnet to attract it. But when you're at the lowest of low, hope is a step up, a you can say the rope inside of the hole you dug yourself in. I was able to climb out. And then I just lived in trusting what I was feeling, meaning that next day I'm like, you know what? I need to read up. I need to get this, to put my hands on this. And so at that time that I was consider me a single mom, even though there was a partner in the building. I took care of everything, the kids, the job. He took care of everything outside the house. I took care of everything inside the house. So you could see it wasn't that equal, it wasn't divided equally. So I
Right.
was very overwhelmed with taking care of everything and everyone, including myself, but I was the last one on the totem pole. And so when I went to the bookstore the next day, did I have time to read? Based on where I was, no. However, because of that spiritual epiphany, automatically, I literally was reading two books at the same time. I didn't even have time to read one, but I would just like move. I'm like, oh my God, this makes sense. Oh my God, this makes sense. And, I'm going to share the authors that most do know that are listening is, Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, Esther and Jerry Hicks. I call Esther and Jerry Hicks Psychic 101 because it's so simple yet very profound. That's where most can start to reclaim and understand that there's a lot more around you, inside of you, that you can create. And then I started moving into certain things. I got the strength to leave that relationship. And then I said, what's this Reiki stuff? I call these things lily pads, just like a little frog, you jump on, you sun yourself, you eat a few crickets, and then you jump to the next lily pad. And so, I stepped into energy work as like, the Reiki. I'm like, what is this? I didn't last too long because once I was able to harness it, literally it was less than 6 months. I said, there is more to this. And then I started breathing a certain way and visualizing energy coming into me and maneuvering the energy where I wanted it to go. And then I took a 1 year intuitive development course that supersized all of the things that I already started figuring out on my own. However, it's always nice to know what it is that you are actually doing, getting a baseline and then moving forward from there. And then 20 years of practice of writing a book, being on 2 reality shows, and you could Google me and I'm everywhere.
Oh, I love that. No, it is really true because, often when people reach out to me, they're like, well, what are the steps that you took? And I'm like, my steps aren't going to be the same as your steps. Each of us are unique to ourselves. We have our own personal journey that we contracted to do while we're here. And so I can give you an idea of what to do, and I share my ideas, but it may not look the same or be the same for you. And I think you said really a couple of important things, going back to the Reiki, right? Reiki 101, you're taught, power works through you. This is how you do it. This is what you do.
Hmm.
And as I went through, I did Usui Reiki, Karuna Reiki, and Lighterian Reiki. I was hooked from the beginning because it helped to heal my daughter. My daughter was born sick. And so I share her story often about the power, not only the power of belief, but the power of knowing that you hold this power within you. And so I always
Hmm.
felt a connection to my hands and the healing power because I was raised Catholic and we had laying of the hands. So I understood what that
Hmm.
was, but I didn't understand that I had really the ability. I always felt like I was a vessel, but I didn't know necessarily that I had the ability to move what that was, right? And so in the beginning, we're
Yes.
starting our journey, but we may not understand what all of that means. I go back and I look at it now and I sort of chuckle to myself, like I had no idea in the beginning what I know now, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's powerful. I like to describe energy as a language because I think people misconstrue it sometimes, like, well, what is it and what are you doing? And they get so caught in the analytical, logical aspect of it rather
Yeah.
than tapping into that intuitive side. And I believe that's part of that balancing of the masculine and the feminine, right? Yes, we want to
Hmm.
know how things work and how it's done, but we also want to use that flow that comes through the feminine aspect of us. So I want to
Yes.
share a little bit about when you're listening to someone's energy, right? What's some of the surprising things? Because I feel like some people sometimes they come to us and they're like, well, I'm going to hold this back so she doesn't see it, right? But you're like, I see right through it. Can you share some of your sort of aha moments or experiences when some surprising things came through with energy healing?
Yes. Actually, it just happened about 2 hours ago. Was one was really big.
I love it.
Uh, and then I had one that was so profound. Both of us were crying because I get so embraced through my heart about being part of the journey of healing that,
Mm.
you can't hold back. You're just so grateful, and that grateful just blooms out from you. And so I'm involved emotionally with them as well. I mean, that's how we give it our all, right? And so what happened a couple hours ago, this gentleman came to me through another client who I actually healed her entire family and all her clients. And she keeps sending me, and she sent her son's best friend. He had a freak accident on the basketball court. Guy comes over, does this little elbow thing, but knees him and kicks him at the same time. Well, he did it from the front of his knee and bent his knee backwards. So then he came to me and he was kind of like, all over the place with his walking. His foot was half dangling. It's been a process because when someone goes through something very traumatic, you first have to connect. And if I apologize if I'm repeating what you already know, but these are the listeners. You first have to connect to what happened emotionally during that accident. And I can go back several months because usually they're having a thought process. And during that emotional time for him, there were two of them that ganged up on him for something they did through his work a couple of months before. And it was the
Wow.
same, one of the guys was one of the ones who did something against him through work. So in that very moment, you cannot, you know, let me speak this very slowly. Let's say you're the guy who had the freak accident. So you're going to say to yourself, well, I wasn't thinking about him at that moment that he kicked me, but your subconscious was. And when your subconscious is connecting to an accident, boom, right in that moment, you're going to have emotional connections to pain, agony, suffering. May it be in that case where it was his leg and all of that. So fast forward that I've been working with him, he had to take steps. So I had to work on his throat, communicating. I had to work on his head, getting out of his head. I had to work on his shoulders, perception of burden, knees restricted and capped off. It was the right side, which is dad or masculine energy, two guys, masculine energy. And then he had some dad stuff going on at the same time. So I had to shift all of the emotional connections to the body, in the body, and then the physical stuff as well. So today, we are at the point where I said to myself, no matter what, I am going to get down to the very end of what's going on. So what I did is I closed my eyes and I visualized with my hands and through my head on the inside of the knee, the ligaments, the tendons, the ankle, the foot. I put my hands on the foot. I felt the weakness. I felt the strength in the right side of the foot, the weakness in the left. I'm like, okay, Terrie, where is this coming from? And then I gently, with my thumb, went up, and then I got it. I had my one thumb behind the knee where the accident was and where he tore all the stuff. And I knew it was the knee because I meditated on his body before he showed up, and the knee kept showing itself. I said, okay. And when he walked in, I said, we're going to spend a lot of time on your knee today. And then once I started moving my hands around and visualizing, I knew exactly there was one point behind the knee. It was along the bone, but between like the calf and the ankle. And then I just gently touched it, and then I could feel the where my thumb was, the muscle was triggering, but I was halfway down his leg. And I said, there it is. There it is. And then I knew for a fact that that was keeping the weakness on the right side where his foot was dangling just slightly. And I said, there it is. I said, you're going to use a TENS machine, but you're going to turn it up super high. And I said, and then it's going to stigmatize or generize, the ligaments, the tendons, because, a TENS machine is used in physical therapy. I use it quite often in my neck. I have jaw issues and stuff. I use it all the time to help release and relax the muscles in the jaw and the neck, the shoulders. And I said, this is going to help. And I said, but you had to turn it up really high because it's those tendons and ligaments deep in there. And I said, you turn up high, breathe through it. I said, I'm telling you, you're going to get back to track. I could feel it. And you're like, got the Christmas present of a lifetime. And this is it. It's going to work. And then his best friend came to me a couple of years back. It was the woman, the mother, sent her son, and he started football at age 8. And when he came to me, he was 23 at the time. And he was a football all the way through college, went to the Rose Bowl and all of the college, semi-pro. Minutes before NFL, the last game he did before NFL chose him, and he was on the roster. He was right there, a breath away from NFL. He was in the game, and a bunch of guys pounced on him and broke his elbows 1,000 different ways. Wow. So when he came to me, he had 3 months of physical therapy, surgeries, and then it was frozen. So he could move it maybe 1/8 up to his chest. So literally it was way down by his waist. And he said, Miss Terrie, I can't do anything about this. I said, stop. Don't say that, because now when you say stuff like that, you're holding yourself in that space that'll never get better. So that's why I tell people, please refrain from doctors saying this is the best we could do and you're not going to get any better. No, no, no. I even tell my dentist, I'm a walking miracle with my broken jaw when I was young. Do not tell me anything negative that I can't, because no one told me, and I'm a walking miracle. I'm good. And so I said, okay, let me just cup your elbow. I'm going to breathe a certain way. And then you just lay there. I couldn't even count to 5. I felt this little shake. And I said, okay, lift your arm. He lifted it all the way to his chest. Wow. I started crying. He started crying. I'm like, what? And I just like jumping up and down. And I said, okay, our next session, we're going to put your hand behind your back, and we're going to have your hand touching your shoulder blade on the back side. And we got that on the second session. because
Wow.
it was a matter, I know, it was so powerful. I'll never forget. He's like my son from another mother. He is so amazing. And I've said, just don't get wrapped up in the emotional connection to something that has happened. You could blame it on you tripped off a curb or your heel was too high or whatever, but it is an emotional connection to it. And once we shift the emotional connection, that the pain will go away. And
Yeah.
usually, we can fix all of that and more, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing and so beautiful. I love that you shared about what you receive as well, because I think that's important for my listeners to understand is when we are giving, we are also receiving, right? There's so
Hmm.
much power that's running through and energy. And as much as we're giving, we're receiving. And I think if people put that more into the aspect of their everyday life, I mean, can you imagine as much as I give, I receive? I mean, if you understood
Yes.
that you have the power to change everything in your life, to make it the way you wish it to be, we would be such a different world today. I want to talk a little
Yes.
bit about uncovering those hidden blocks. What about for you when you started? Because we're all born with these subconscious blocks, as you said. We've all had either experiences or injuries or whatever it was, and we end up in these marriages that sort of mirror how we grew up, right? I was one married to a narcissistic abuser for many, many years before he tried to kill me, and I finally left him.
Wow.
But you look back at that, and when you look at it, and you're like, okay, well, there was other underlying things that I created because that's how I felt about myself. What about for you? I want to tap a little bit into your own personal experience with that repeating of patterns.
Yes. So when people hear my story, I want them to relate it to their own life stories. So when you stop long enough to reflect and evaluate your childhood, it will really tell you a mountain of things. But because, you and I work in the subconscious, we'll bring up things when people were 3, 2, even in the womb. I pick up a lot of stuff there as well. And it's going to be difficult for someone to naturally go to the space of 3 and go, I don't remember. But when you see patterns, so a perfect example is my dad was a long haul truck driver. He left on the road when my sister was 3, so I was 5. And so then my mom became a single parent because he would go for months at a time. Way back then, there wasn't what is now known. You would have to drive to the West Coast and you'd have to grab another load, and it wouldn't be back to the East Coast. It could be to Texas or somewhere else. And he would have to drive all over the country to make his way back to the East Coast. And it could take 2, 3 months at a time. And when he would come back, here he is. And he would stay for 2, 3 days and leave again. And that's what my life was.
Mm,
So now, when you're seeing a life like that, what you're seeing is your partner comes and goes. So that's what I took in. If a partner comes and goes, that's natural. But your reality is that a partner is not supposed to come and go, because then there's issues in between when they're coming and going. And then there was like, I mean, I just share this, I've shared it with multiple podcasts, but what young children should not be hearing adult intermittent
mm,
stuff. And we're hearing that. And so here you have tiny children are now seeing, especially little girls, you have to serve and service your mate no matter what.
yeah.
And then what happens also is my dad would come in and he loved to have to be the full center of attention. We know what that looks like.
Yes.
And so he would say, you little girl, turn the TV on before remotes. You little girl, I had a sister, go get me something, some iced tea. You little boy, my older brother, 1 year older, go get me this. So my dad would have us do this, this, the whole entire 2 to 3 days he was there.
Mm,
So we were the little servants while he was there. And so as we got older, when he came home, the less we made ourselves at the door, we would hide, because now it's like, that it didn't feel right. But
yeah.
then, you're the pattern of mom calling you, come and help your dad, help do this, do that. And so now the pattern was naturally, I'm the caregiver, taking care of my brother and sister. So in my partnerships, I became the natural caregiver, the overgiver, and the fixer, because I was the one who had to fix everything. I was the first girl, but the middle one. So now in those patterns, it's now part of what I naturally do. And when you naturally do it, you think, oh, that's what pleases me. That's what makes me happy. But the
Right.
reality is, it's not. It's doing the opposite of the things you're saying you want. I want an equal partner. I want someone to help do things. But because I just naturally stepped in, he naturally steps out. And then
Yes.
now, and a year later, I'm resentful, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, but I set myself up for failure. And I
Yeah.
did it at the beginning. So I tell my clients, you have a 3-month window. And the 3-month window is at the very beginning of your relationship. What do you want
Yeah.
your relationship to be? If you want an equal partner, you must step out of the kitchen. You must step and say, okay, and however the interaction goes between you and your potential or mate. But in those first 3 months, you're setting yourself up. If you want somebody to fully cook, don't cook. Even if you
Right.
know how to, don't cook, because
Mhm.
you will, even if that's all you did in the prior relationship. So that's how you shift and change. Now, there's many listeners that are saying, well, I've been in this relationship for 10 years and I'm angry and this. Well, then that's where communication steps in, because the first thing when you say, I don't want to do this anymore, the first thing they say is, what's wrong with you? Nothing is wrong with you. You just got to the point where you're finally speaking up, but you've
Yeah.
set him up for failure or her up for failure because you never said anything at the beginning for fear of. And again, that fear can be retaliation or hurting their feelings, or, I thought I was going to show them how much I love them and they'll love me that in
Yes.
return. Oh yeah, I did that one. You know that one. And
Yes.
so, and it doesn't work that way. And so now you have to reel it back. And then you're saying to yourself, okay, communication is key, the key component. And this is where, if you've been in a relationship for a really long time, it may not go the way you want it to go, only because you've been doing these patterns that created the resentment and anger and frustration in you. And now you're done with it. And there's where they can either shift up with you or shift out. And you have
Yeah.
to be ready, willing, and able in whatever direction it goes. But when you're communicating, please be fully aware if there's judgment, because the more you say, but you did, and you are, and you, that's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it always goes back to yourself, right? Because we know what we want often, right? We can say, I know what I want. We just don't always know how to get there, or and we haven't been taught the way to communicate, quite frankly. We've grown up in places, especially as women, you were told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, when to say it, right? You were told to be quiet, children don't speak. I have
Yeah.
all of those that I've worked through my entire life. And when you start to go back and you look at them and you see how often you just took for granted, right? What was up there subconsciously, you were supposed to be this or you're supposed to be that, and you just flow easily into that. But then one day you wake up, and that's part of the awakening, right? Waking up to, no, I don't want to do this anymore. No, I don't want to be part of this. I want an equal partner. I want somebody that cares and loves for me just as much as I care and love for them. That's a lot of that shifting that you're seeing happening, right? I mean, it can be
Mm-hmm.
beautiful and it can be heart wrenching at the same time, because I always say that the spiritual journey is not for the weak, right? We are looking for who we truly are, not who we were told we were supposed to be throughout our entire life, or even our grandparents, right? I always use the simple equation of like money. Money doesn't grow on trees. A lot of us heard that growing up. So we have
Mm-hmm.
that mindset, money doesn't grow on trees. When in fact it does. It's made from trees. It's a paper, right? So you're like, actually, that's absolutely wrong. So as a child, I would say stuff like that and be told, no, that's not true. Be quiet. It's funny though. I talk about the in between a lot because I think that's the place where I get frustrated most often. And I want to talk a little bit about that for someone who's listening right now who may be stuck in that space of the in between. They really have came out of who they were. they've done some work, right? And they've done a lot of work maybe to get to where they are now. And they know they have an idea where they want to be or what they're becoming, or they'll be guided to this. But right now they're in sort of this in-between space. And for me, that looked like an intermittent of integration over a year or so's worth period. It wasn't an overnight thing. And I sat in a space of a lot of stillness and quiet and a lot of seclusion and cocooning. For me, that's what I needed in that year of integration. What would you say is sort of in that in-between space? Because we are supposed to be learning in that in-between space as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So I look at it as there's yes, a no, and maybe. And the maybe is in that in-between state. Because as we're growing up, we're told, well, yes, stop it. It's either yes or no. Don't give me this maybe. I heard that a lot to my mom, right? Or from her. And once I realized that we can't discount maybe as long as it's within minutes, days, weeks, it should not last more than a couple weeks. However, when you're in that in between stage, like you mentioned about careers and relationships and stuff, that can last a bit of time, because during that time is going to give you the clarity to move into your yes or to your no, right? But then a lot of people will look at it as like, I want it in and stick it in a box. I need it in a month. I need it in, less than a certain amount of time. But something in you has to learn or receive something to trigger you to open up the things that you're saying that you're wanting. Look, I have a gal in New Zealand that does exactly what I do. And when I need support, I'll contact her. And every time I called her, you have dad stuff, you have dad stuff. I said, I've worked on my dad stuff. I have no more dad stuff. And I said, but I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say, let me resonate on it. Because the more you push the no away, the longer it's going to take to get to that end result. So every time I got triggered in something, I'm like, okay, is this mom or dad? And go through the process and then heal through it. But something happened about 3 months ago that triggered massive dad stuff, so massive that it took me 2 months to get out of it. And it
Wow.
was not good. But it wasn't good in what I was feeling, but it was so profound that when I got to the other side, and again, everyone lives intuitively, but they blow it off. But when you are an intuitive, you see beyond, So everything that came to me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to step into this. Okay, I'm guided to this. And then when something like I did recently a Joe Dispenza week-long retreat, and I booked it 2 months in advance. And that was the end of what I was experiencing that triggered all my dad stuff. But 2 months, I thought that's too far out. But I had followed Joe Dispenza for years, 10 plus years, but I wasn't ready to jump into anything that he was offering except for some meditations. And in that moment, I instantaneously, like literally the credit card appeared and like, I'm in, because I was that ready. But then here I am, 2 months. Oh my gosh, 2 months. But I knew in those 2 months, I needed something. I needed to connect more. So I was started having conversations with God every night. Give me clarity, help me let go, help me see this, help me see that. It's the how, the what, the where, not the why. You never get the answers to the why. And so I was asking for all of this. And during those 2 months up to the retreat, when I was now in the retreat, every single day, massive connections and spiritual epiphanies and seeing things massive, because I intuitively asked all the questions for healing, for guidance, for clarity, and I got everything that then catapulted me to feeling clear, changing how I act towards certain things and certain behaviors. And that was it. So
Wow.
instead of being angry and pointing fingers at the person, I took it as what's in this, but having to deal with these emotions and having to deal with all my dad stuff and the anger I had, but I had it toward myself, toward God. Yes, God was involved. I'm like, how could this happen? Why, as an intuitive, didn't I see half this stuff? Oh my God, really? but it was in the purpose of catapulting me to where I am. And I know that how I've been deeply meditating and asking for more guidance about, and I've just been saying, I want to heal cancer, disease, and accidents with my hands. So today, I mean, I did everything that I normally do, but it was in such a detailed, in my mind, profound that I knew all my 2 months of meditation. Yeah. Yeah, 2 months, well, solid going in and asking for guidance and then Joe Dispenza's retreat catapulted me to magnificence when I had that session
Yes.
today. So we have to understand that you can't put a healing in a box, that it can be the juicy fruit, what's right there that's popping, or it can be so deep because I've spent the last 20 years working on myself and I'm going to continue. But those were so profound and so deep. It was almost as if it was the root ball that was holding my tree that needed to
Yeah.
come up and out to catapult me where I am, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing. I want to finish up and I want you to share with people where they connect with you and how they can help work with you and dive deeper into your work, where to find your book. Can you share that with us?
Thank you so much. So you can find me. I have a website, which is my name, terriechristine.com. I offer a free 15-minute guided meditation that has theta sound to take you to the deeper level of the mind. And believe me, meditation should be part of your lifestyle. You can also find me on Instagram, on TikTok. I do celebrity readings from pictures. Yes, pictures. You send me a picture and I can read the blueprint of their energy in that picture and tell you what's going on, past, present, and future. And let's see, you can find me on some Love and Marriage DC. I was on several episodes there, and Real Housewives of Potomac, I was there. My book is found on Amazon and also my website, terriechristine.com. And also Facebook, Terrie Christine 333. But I am taking clients. Do remote work. There isn't time and space with energy. And I do have a private studio in the Metro DC, Bethesda, Maryland area.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing so much with us today. Your wisdom and your light is profound and beautiful. And thank you for what you do for the world. I truly, it's been beautiful to connect with another energy healer and to hear your story today. So thank you.
Thanks. I'm fully honored and grateful. I'm very blessed. Thank you.
Thank you. And remember, it's time to heal, awaken, and rise. This is Sacred Wellness.